What is up, guys? This is Basak, and you are watching En Route, our brand new content segment where we marry culture with business. This show, as ever, is sponsored by the good folks over at Roadmap MBA. And we are so excited for yet another really interesting conversation with a textured individual. We're so
Oh,
excited to have powerhouse that is Martha Kinn with us today. And let me just reel off some accolades real quick before we get started. Martha is the manager of Years and Years / Olly Alexander, and she is the founder of her very own artist management company, Kinndred Management. Her former clients also include Rizzle Kicks, whom she discovered at age 22 and steered to platinum success with their debut album in 2011. Martha, hi, so good to have you here.
hi.
How are you
Thanks for
doing?
having me.
Of course. So I'm going to start off by saying we are both in pink, and this was
Yeah,
not, coordinated at all, but we make it look good.
we do.
Was that an intentional choice for you this morning, or
No, I don't know. I just felt it.
it's the weather?
Yeah, exactly.
It inspires all manner of things. Now, we actually met in very painful conditions, I would say. We were poolside at Soho House. And we got into a really kind of fascinating discussion around networking and music and artist development. For those that don't know, just jumping in here, how did you first start out in talent management, or was it something that kind of you fell into more naturally?
Was definitely something that I fell into because I feel like as a young person, I never thought of artist management as a career. Like it's not really something that you think about or see. Like there's no like people out there that you're like, oh yeah, I want to have their job. Like the only people I can think of are just people that like used to rip off clients, like, who like looked nothing like me and wasn't what I was about. So yeah, I when I was 2021, I was at university and I was studying English and I was doing a lot of journalism at the time, writing like music journalism. I was doing some bits here and there. And yeah, I just ended up, I was just out at shows all the time, like out gigs, hustling. And eventually I met someone who was looking for an assistant and he worked at a management company and a record label. And yeah, I just started from there at 21 and yeah, worked my way up, but it's a long story.
I love that. It's funny because I've done a few of these conversations with Roadmap. Almost every single person has fallen into it.
Yeah, yeah. I know there are like courses out there, like music business, music industry courses. But I don't know, it's never,
Something about the creativity of it, or the nature of the networking, or the social scene of it, it's actually very like allows itself for organic progression, which is nice. Would you say?
yeah. I think for me, like, and I think for anyone who wants to get into music, like, it was just, I have to be in music. Like, music is my
Mm.
passion. Like, I am obsessed with music. Like, I wish I could play music, but I can't. So
Yeah,
I'm
I wish I could sing, but I can't.
exactly same. I
Something.
am, I had a little moment at a failed guitar, but so
I love
but
that.
it's like I just love music. Like it's in my blood. Like I can't exist without it being like such a big part of my life. Like, I was always, even just growing up, like my dad like ran record stores and like had a record shop. And
Wow.
like we were taught from a young age, like this is good music. Like you need to
Wow.
music.
Wow.
And I just knew I wanted to be in music, but I didn't know which part I wanted to be in. And I think that's like really normal and natural for most young people to just have the passion and then work out like what best suits your skill set. I think for me, I'm quite a creative person naturally, and you know, and I love, variety and like pressured situations, like all of that, and like I'm very ambitious. So it just really worked out super well that music management, you get to do everything,
Yeah.
super close to the artist, like, there's a real creative element to it. And, yeah, I just felt I could never be limited to just one area of music.
I love that. It's what I call a talent adjacent.
Totally.
Oh,
Exactly.
You're close enough to the sun, but you don't get burnt.
Oh my God, I always say that I'm fame adjacent. I'm like so
Right,
happy that
exactly.
I'm not in the sun. Like
No, and I don't want to be in the sun, but you're close enough to feel the warmth of the heat. And that is it.
so true.
Let's talk a little bit about talent management that you've touched upon there. This series does exist predominantly to help young people, and you've already kind of picked up on that. Specifically understand kind of like what does a talent manager, artist manager do? I know this because it's my industry now as well, but I didn't know this. And so could you just give me like a laid down of like a typical day in the life of Martha Kinn?
Oh my God, well, it's so different like every day, but it really depends on where you're at in an artist cycle, like whether you're in an album campaign, a single campaign, if you're touring. So it can really look different every day. Um, but I would say, like, the way I would describe what I do is that your first job is, well, can I just go back a sec and say that like the most
Absolutely.
important thing that we do as artist managers is trust. It's all about building that trust with your artist because that artist is trusting you to go out and represent them. So I kind of see myself as like the artist in the middle, and I'm this like buffer surrounding them. And then all around the buffer is like all these different teams, you know, the press department, you know, the record label,
Radio.
artist, radio, you know, could even be the choreographer, whatever, depending on, you know, where you're at, what it is. And it is your job to, you know, protect the artist, but also like, you know, make a lot of decisions for them, with them. And yeah, and
Business
essentially
development
I'm
as
running.
well. When brands come, make those conversations happen. And,
Exactly, exactly.
looking at the success that you've now had, would you say that you rely on your instincts more over the years?
Oh, very much so. And I was going to also say, like, the other thing that really kind of pulled me into artist management was that I started off doing being a scout for a record label. So I was naturally very well, I was just thrown into being super independent, like meeting everyone, like going out to gigs, you know, looking online. Back then it was blogs, you know, now obviously TikTok. So yeah, I was just doing all of that stuff. And that's how I came across my first act. And yeah, like I've always relied on my gut. Like I'd say every success I've ever had, almost every single person did not believe in them. So it's been every time it's been, you know, a labor of love and nurturing and time and effort with no money at all and no one believing you until you get to that place where
Wow.
suddenly people start to believe what you believe.
That's what separates kind of the visionaries, right, from those that aren't. And it's very easy to jump on a bandwagon after the fact, and I see it all the time. But I'm especially excited and interested by artist managers and their skill for discernment, right? To be able to be like, actually, you are a diamond in the rough, and with a little bit of my polish and a little bit of love and a little bit of luck, because I believe in luck as well. That's
And timing.
all of it. And let's talk about that because years and years, first debuted at #1 on the UK albums chart, and they were the fastest selling debut album of the year, which is huge. I mean, how does that make you feel when you hear kind of things like that?
I mean, it's funny. That was back in 2015. So that was a little while ago now. And yeah, I've managed Years and Years, who's now just Olly, for just over 10 years. So it's been a really long time. But yeah, I think I feel like even though I'd had success with Rizzle Kicks before, I feel like, I don't know, this was
It was
really like
your moment. Yeah.
this was my moment. This was my baby, you
Yeah.
know, that
Yeah.
like I have been in there, and there'd been so many times where, you know, like I'd spent my own money. Like there were so many times where like they almost just stopped.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
do remember like around 2014, 2015, like we won the like BBC Sound Poll, which was like such a huge deal that year. And yeah, and then like a #1 single, #1 album, like it was crazy. Like I can barely even, it's
Fathom
hard
it
to
now.
say.
You look at
I
it
feel
now.
like
Yeah.
if you have success on a first album like that, you're just constantly playing catch up,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
And you can't really, yeah, it's hard to yeah, it's hard for me to explain what that feels like. But all I know is you've got to be careful about how you maintain and chase that success afterwards, because that's the real tricky part.
Mm-mm. What did you see in him that others didn't? Specifically talking about Ollie.
Ollie, oh my God, I just saw him. So I saw a YouTube video back when Years and Years were a 5-piece and there were ukuleles involved, like sounding completely different. And like, I just saw Ollie and I just thought he was just a star. Like, I just fell in love with him. I couldn't explain it. It was just like a charisma that he had. But then the funny thing was, is when I met with them as a band, Ollie was completely silent and he never said anything and he wasn't driving any decisions at all. So I always thought like the best thing I ever did for that band for Ollie was to bring his voice, as in not just his singing voice, his voice in the band out, and for him to take charge of the project, which he wasn't doing before. He was an actor and it was more of a part-time thing. Like, I think I had the most ambition, like, that more than anyone actually. They were all kind of like, you know, this is our part-time job. Like, no one was doing it full-time.
And you just knew that you wanted to take them to that next level. And sometimes it takes someone who is external to the group, external to the talent and the project, whatever it might be across the board, to kind of have the foresight and kind of go, actually, you're here, but you could really, really be here.
Totally. I mean, like a few months in, I like sat them down and said, you need to fire 2 of your members, otherwise I'll
Wow.
carry on managing you.
How did that conversation go?
Well, I'm still here, aren't I? They chose me.
Chose you.
And you know, like I was 24, 25, like I was ballsy, you know. You have to make these hard decisions and you have to challenge. Like, I see so many managers, like you said, they're just kind of riding the artist's coattails, like they're just there and they're not challenging them and they're letting them lead, and that can go to a certain part, especially if the artist is like super talented, right? But you know,
but they're not there to do the strategy piece. You're there to do the strategy piece. You know, they're there to protect their art form and be sincere and hopefully do great work, but the strategy and the thinking and the brains in some way, not to take away from their own thinking, is you and your team, and kind of managing and leveraging the relationships, the outside interests, the stakeholders, everything you've just mentioned. That's the job, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And doing it well sometimes means necessarily difficult conversations, which,
Yeah,
have you gotten better at them over the years, do you think?
definitely. Yeah.
Do you have any pro tips for anyone in terms of how to do you sit someone down and you're like, look,
I'd say one thing I've learned is if you need to sack someone like on the team, do it over the phone.
you're like, nope, we're not having a face-to-face.
Don't do it on email, don't do it on text, but people can get very emotional about these things and get very angry with you. Like, I've come across a lot of men in this industry that have not taken well to, you know, moving on. I don't mean employees, of course. I would do that in person. But no, I feel like I can give better advice than that. But it's just something that's come to me, that like there can be a lot of aggression and emotion sometimes out there. But yeah, no. What else is my tip for having hard conversations?
Just have them.
I mean, have them, but also like come. I mean, this sounds obvious, but come with a solution. Don't just come with a problem. Like, and you know, just be really clear about what you're saying and why you're saying it. And you've got to be so sure of it yourself. Like, you've really got to believe it yourself before you bring it to someone else. Like, don't just say like, oh, this is happening and this isn't, you know, this isn't going to go well, because it's like, well, what are you going to do about it? Like, you know, like, here's an example, like a very early music video we shot. Like, I didn't think it was good enough. Like, I said that, I was like, it's not good enough, but you know, we don't really have any money left, but hey, I've got an idea for you. What about XYZ? Why don't we use this? Like, why don't you ask this person? So yeah, that's the way to do it.
I love it. You know, identifying the issue, but then also figuring it out and solving it, and being kind of working on the fly where needed as well.
Yeah, exactly that.
You are a female founder, of course, and you know, I was
very new,
but still, existing. I'm a female founder.
You
it's
are.
it's tough to be in this industry and navigate it. And then there's also advantages to that, I think, as well. There's something about my female lens in the world, the way that we operate as women, our empathy, our emotional intelligence. I could go on. We have 1,000 amazing skills. We're wonderful that men don't have, but it makes it hard to put all of that into this space. How have you found that in your experiences navigating all of this, especially when it comes to some of those more kind of dominant characters we'll come across?
I found it a lot harder when I was younger. I think success really just changes everything. Like, well, and power really. Like, not to get too deep, but as a young woman between, in my early 20s with no real power, like, yeah, I like experienced sexual harassment. I wasn't respected. Like, I found it really tough, and also people would always be like, oh, are you the assistant? Are you the girlfriend? But then, as time went on and it became very clear that I was neither of those things, and I was there doing the job, and I was the dominant force in the room, in the boardrooms with record labels and all of that, like that respect came. And, it didn't become as much of a problem. But then every now and then though, like for example, one year, there was like the Music Week Awards. Like it was that year we spoke about, I think 2015 or 2016, when I was having all of that success. And the guy was working for, who ran the company I was working with at the time, they had put him down as, the manager basically, for my work. And luckily, this man, very, very good man, Ian Watt, the first man I've ever worked with that didn't try and take credit for my work. Like he called them up and explained, actually, no, it was me. But so they added me on, which again, it's like, it should have just been me solo, but like, that's just the way it goes, isn't it? Like, of course they just assumed that the older, more powerful man, like was the one behind it all. So yeah, I definitely found that very frustrating, but I haven't had it. And then there's been like a few like funny little things along the way, especially traveling. Like I remember once when I went to Japan, like someone from the record label asked me if I found it hard, like traveling with the band because I was a woman.
They insinuating?
I don't know. We're just so delicate, But yeah, no, I don't see it. I see it like you said, like I'm starting to feel more the benefits, because I get a lot of like I'd say if I get a lot of new artist recommendations through lawyers, and a lot of lawyers come to me directly saying, oh, they're looking for a female manager and we thought of you. So a lot of artists are actively looking for female managers, which is a really good thing.
Yeah, it's really a good indication of the health of the industry as well. And the kind of growing appreciation we're having for that female experience and that necessary one. From everything you've said, especially around Olly, it sounds like you have nurtured him, right? And I think
only what his job is,
which is the job. So I was extra excited to find you because I've predominantly spoken to men, unfortunately. And I wanted to speak to some other women who are in positions of power and are doing the down work and doing it well. You touched upon something there around the respect level for you increasing as you got a little bit more power. I still find that problematic because
so do I.
You should get the power, or not even the power, you should get the respect, just for being in this world. But if that's what it's gonna take, then that's fine as well. We'll just have to kind of create a whole army of us.
And I think it's more like I really worry for younger women in the industry now who don't have that power. Like I remember how normalized it was when I was that age. And even though it's gotten a lot better, like I know that there are still, there's a lot of still sexual predators in the music industry. Like me and some close friends like talk about this a lot, and like I hope to do more to help the situation, but it is still a very male dominated industry and not always that safe for women, and particularly young women, because like any creative industry, it's pretty much based on exploitation. Like it is built on exploitation, and young women coming in, they just are so happy to get the job and they want to do it well that, you know, they might accept like some, you know, all kinds of behavior that's just not acceptable. I know that I did.
What can we then say now today to those people, especially if you're a female artist? I think that exploitation piece is a lot easier because you're trying to get ahead, you're trying to get in front. What can we say now to those women to help support them in that journey?
God, I don't know.
Because one thing I would suggest is support networks, you know.
Yeah, support networks.
Support networks and having, like you said, a team that you genuinely trust. I've also interviewed a lot of female artists and they are surrounded by men. And I always watch the way the men operate around them because sometimes these women are naked doing photo shoots and whatever else they have to do to get the content.
Totally.
I have been very pleasantly surprised, and 9 times out of 10, it's a very tight-knit group of people. And I hope that continues.
Yeah, no, for sure. Exactly that. But like if something doesn't feel right or feels uncomfortable, like go with your gut. And I think also we're in a position now where like people are willing to hear you out. Like people want to hear it. Like you don't. And I think so many women and men like have got your back and support you now. Like we don't have to like live in the silence anymore.
Amen to that. Let's talk a little bit about your mental health initiative that you've launched. This was really, really exciting to me. You launched it in 2019?
Yes.
And it was about trying to give artists and people working in the music industry a kind of proper framework, as it were, to support their mental health. Why was this important for you to champion, and how has it been received a few years on now?
So this is something that I've had in the making for a long time, and I've been feeling like we've needed for a really long time. I think it was a combination of Olly being super open about his mental health, like from really early on in his career. And then also my dad and stepmom work in mental health. So I've always been very open with the conversations about mental health and my own mental health. I go to therapy and I'm a big believer in therapy. I always recommend all my artists get themselves into therapy too. And I just found like in my old company, a lot of people were coming to me with, hey, like this is going on with my artist, like they're really depressed, or this is happening and I don't know what to do. What should I do? And I was like, oh, you know, I'm not sure. Here's my stepmom's number. Like, you know, she talked to you. So I was like, wait, wouldn't it be great if we had this service? Because we're not therapists. We're not like, you know, we're not psychiatrists. Like, we don't know how to deal with these things. So yeah. And when the company I was at got bought up by a larger company, like even though the corporate environment like wasn't for me, like the one thing that was great was that they supported me when I said, hey, I want to set up this service. And I met this really amazing woman called Sam Parker, who co-founded Music Support, which is a charity that's for anyone, working in music, artists and behind the scenes who need support. And together we came up with this plan where, you know, any artist could have a 90-minute session, and she would then decide what they might need, if they needed ongoing support after that. And then she would check in with them every 6 months as well, you know, whether they needed rehab or therapy referral, whatever it was, like she was there to do that. And then on top of that, we had our own group sessions once a month and a few one-to-one sessions too, just to better equip us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is incredible to even be intuitive enough to understand the need and respond to that need quite quickly as well.
Yeah, I just think it's so necessary. Like, you know, people spend a lot of money in the music industry in all different areas, like whether it's the digital, you know, the brand space, but then they're ignoring the most important thing. Like even from a business perspective, like if that artist's mental health isn't good, like you're canceling tours, you're losing money. Like it just makes sense to me to invest your money there and your resource. So I wish more companies had picked it up, and I actually think some are starting to in their own way. But yeah, it's definitely something that is at the forefront of me as a manager. Like you know, that is just the number one priority, the artist's mental health. Like it has to be.
100%. Also, if they're not, again, in a business perspective, if they're not on 1,000% to perform, you don't have much to go off of at that point, you know, and they're not a machine, they are a human being. And I think that's the switch there that needs to be made a little bit more, because sometimes these artists can be built up to such a level of celebrity that they're not real.
Totally. And I think that's like another thing of keeping your artist grounded as well. Like there's all of those things that, you know, as a manager, you should really be prioritizing as part of your job. Like, you know, making sure they don't lose touch with reality, like doing whatever you can.
Oof,
I mean,
that sounds crazy. How do you even do that? I don't even know how to
I
bring
think
that back down to earth.
I think it really helps if you've been there from the start. Like that does really make a difference. And I think, like I said before, like making sure that you're challenging them all the time and not just telling them what they want to hear. Like you can't be a yes person. But then also like making sure that the dialogue is always there, so that they can talk about their mental health, and like that they can see that as like, you know, you've got to be straight with them. Like the record label's not on your side. Like they have a completely different agenda. Like a manager's only agenda should be the artist long-term success, and you know what works alongside that is their mental health and well-being. If you're thinking about anything else like short-term money, any of that, then you're not a good manager. Like you're not an ethical manager. So yeah, I think just reminding the artist that you're there, and that, you know, you are willing to like pull a show, like if they're not okay, that you're the one stepping in and being like, you know what, actually, I don't think you know, I think, you know, we might lose a bit of money, or this might happen, but this is more important. You know, your mental health is more important than money.
I really like that original kind of analogy you gave at the beginning around them being the castle and you being some of the moat around them, right? And making sure that nothing gets to them that shouldn't get to them, and then all the good that is meant to get to them gets to them. And in some way, it sounds like a very busy and semi-thankless job on some level, you know, because there's so many things that you'll do that they probably won't even know about.
Totally. Yeah. It's almost like we're there to keep the illusion alive as well.
Yes, exactly. Everything is what is fine.
Exactly. As in, like, you know, you want everyone to think that the artist is the one like making all these amazing things happen, because they are magical people. And actually they are. They are as close to magic as you can get. But you know, we're like tinkering away in the background as well. It can be a very thankless task, but if you find the right artist who's a good person, who is really grateful and appreciative, like it does feel really good. But I have worked with mostly artists that aren't like that, so be prepared to never be thanked as a manager.
I love that. That is a quotable for us for sure. When you look back at your kind of journey and your personal development within this, could you give me some like character traits that you think that you need to succeed on this journey
as a manager?
As a manager in this world?
Yeah. You have to be like just so super strong in your convictions. Like you have to be super passionate. You have to be really empathetic, compassionate as well, and just so confident in what you believe in, like in the face of other people not believing in you.
Wow.
Believing in your artists, really.
That is very, very, very powerful. And what do you define success to look like for you now, personally?
I think that's so interesting, because I feel like the music industry now, like the markers of success are changing constantly. Like I feel like it used to be charts, and then it became streams, and you know, we had all these things, and you know, awards. But that's not what I consider success. I mean, obviously, yes, that is, we all want those things, don't get me wrong, like that is success. But I think for me, like the most successful thing that I feel like, I guess the thing I'm proudest of with Olly is, you know, what we've done, the success we've had, and the way that we've had it in a really authentic way. That, you know, we've done it in a way that has been true to him as an artist, and has also inspired and helped other queer people. And, you know, along the way, we've done so many amazing things for the queer community, you know, whether it be like his documentary, the TV show he did for Channel 4 for It's a Sin, like kind of, you know, the representation. Like, I know all the fights that I had behind the scenes for Olly to just exist and present how he wanted. Like, so to me, the fact that like we got through it and we did it and we're still doing it and people still care and we still get a chance to do another album, like I don't take that for granted. You know, like we're about to make a fourth album. We might not make a fifth, like you just never know. But also to be here still with Olly 10 years later, I think is a success in itself.
It's beautiful. And then that development piece and that friendship piece as well will carry you guys through, because by the sounds of it, no matter what external obstacles might come your way, he trusts you and you trust him, and he's got the talent to steer the difficult conversations. You've got the kind of strategy piece to get him where he needs to be, and hopefully you make it to album number 10. You know,
exactly, that's the plan.
That is the dream, as they say.
I think also like the other thing, like taking Olly aside, is, you know, I've had like moments where I've managed teams and I've worked within a team, and I just feel like I'm very happy to have never had to exploit anyone or wanted to, because I feel like most people who become successful have done that, really. Okay, maybe that's being a bit extreme, but from what I see in the music industry, I just feel like there's so much of that around. Like I feel like I really enjoyed mentoring younger managers, like mentoring people, and you know, the mental health service, like all of those things to me, like that feels like success to me. And you know, I want to continue it now. Like my new company is very fresh and new, so I only have one employee, but I hope to, you know, create a utopia of other managers and do right by them as well.
I love that. I love how ingrained that operation model is for you. I can hear it when you speak, that kind of it's integrity, right? It's matching what you say with what you do, and being like, we might get that slower, but that's okay, because at least we'll get there the right way. And then that's a beautiful message to put out in the world, especially in this very kind of fast microwave generation of getting everything immediately, and it took 10 years to become an overnight success, so here we are.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Thank you, Martha, so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Oh, thank you. I hope the like sun coming in and out wasn't too distracting.
It was lovely. You were glowing in the light, so I definitely enjoyed it.
I tried.